Managing large fleet of IoT devices is necessary, but is not an easy feat. The nature of IoT devices is to be specialized, customized, different, which makes the business of managing them a tricky one. Is updating software on an industrial automation piece of hardware needed, wanted, possible? How deep do I need and want to go when it comes to software updates? Just at the application level? Or do I need to be able to update parts or the entirety of the OS as well? Let's ask someone who knows the business of managing fleet of IoT devices, the IoT Giant, Marc. Marc has been around for some time now. He joins me on the IoT Show to discuss the topic and demo Balena IO, a secure container-based technology stack that enables you to develop, deploy, manage, and scale fleets of IoT Linux devices. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host, and today we have Marc with us. Marc, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm
Thanks
great.
for inviting me, by the way.
Well, thanks for joining us. So I'm here in Seattle. It's morning for me. Where are you tuning in from?
I'm based in Barcelona in Europe. It's 4 p.m. here. So we changed hour last weekend. So I think we reduced the time difference.
For one more week, because we're changing our next week. So we're in the same time zone back again. Okay, Marc. So you're here to tell us things about Balena.io. And more generally, we'll talk about updating software at the edge or managing software at the edge. Before we get into what people are here for, we'd like to know you a bit better. So what's Marc?
Fantastic. So I'm Marc Pous. I'm developer advocate at Balena at this moment. I have founded IoT companies in the past. I have been helping other IoT companies to build their products. And something else that I like a lot is to try to bring value to the communities. So I create different IoT communities, from the IoT Coffee Talk, IoT Stars, which is an event during Mobile World Congress or Embedded World. Then I created IoT Barcelona, IoT Munich. So it's everything to bring value to the community, and then it will come back, all of this value that you give to the community.
It will. I'm convinced of that. And you do also lots of work in the open, right? Everything is open source because it's about the community and helping each other, right?
Yeah. And lately, I'm focused on partnerships as well at Balena. So this is how I get deeper and deeper into the industrial IoT. I'm trying to work more and more with software solutions on industrial IoT that can work with Balena, but as well with solution providers. And it has been fascinating to learn and trying to understand better how industrial IoT works and how software updates work there.
Perfect segue to my first question. So you're the right person to ask this one, actually. So we're talking a lot about, updating software at the edge. Over-the-air updates, I'm hearing that more and more as being a differentiator for IoT platforms or for solutions at the edge, where, hey, you'll be able to push your software updates and it's going to be over the air while you're in operations, all managed from the cloud and so on. So from your perspective, is updating software on industrial automation machines and equipment, hardware, is it needed? Is it something that you really want to do? And, well, is it possible?
This is a super good question. And actually, on my IoT journey, I think I started in 2007. I discovered how important, or I feel this pain of software updates. I discovered how companies without a strategy on software updates or over-the-air updates were struggling, not only technologically speaking, but as well financially. So let me give you an example of a customer I had on my previous startup that they couldn't, because of memory problems, they said, have an OTA strategy or at least being able to update the devices remotely. So they needed to go one by one. So when they had a new release, they need to go one by one to the places where they had their devices deployed, just get the old device, put a new one with the latest release, go to the lab, just manually flash the new release on this device and bring this device somewhere else. So you can imagine that this is not scalable. This doesn't work. And actually, yeah, it's I have seen as well too many devices that become bricks because the OTA didn't work properly,
Okay,
from
yeah.
Sonos or
On
other
that
things.
scenario you were describing, if we're talking about like tens of devices, that might be the most secure way of doing it, right? And cheapest, right? You go there, have an operator, they change it, or you just send the box and give them instructions on how to do that. But you're right. I mean, when it comes to scaling, which is what IoT is about, you want to go beyond this like tens of devices. So that's one problem. But you also pointed out that it's risky, right? It's an operation that needs to be well
Yeah.
done because you're remote, and if you break that device that is like offshore or in a remote distance or where there is no operator able to make changes, right? Well, not yet at the era where they can tune in with their virtual reality device, and you're going to tell them plug this, do this, control alt delete, whatever.
Yeah, indeed. But as
So
well, something that clicked my mind thinking about software updates was listening Walker Reynolds' podcast, and he mentioned something about that Tesla does a massive major release to their cars
yeah,
recurrently. So, for example, I check and I think this year they have done 88 software updates on Tesla cars, and last year 153 times they update their cars. So that means that you don't only have like better functionalities or safety enhancements, but as well you get new features on your car.
mhm.
So probably 2 years after, your car is not anymore the car that you acquired that day on the shop. It's a complete different machine because of the software. And a bit like connecting with Mark Anderson, thing that he mentioned, in 2011, I guess, that software is eating the wall. But I think it's going to eat the wall if we enable software updates.
Yeah. And but that's interesting. That also opens up, and that maybe is the more negative person in me. That opens up for new business models. Tesla is a good example where you have to pay a subscription to get the software update. So your car is capable of doing all these fancy things because it has the hardware, but the hardware is not enabled because the software, you need to pay up to get the new functionality. So it's very interesting that that's cars are something where you're paying for the hardware initially, right? So if you wanted to have this fancy electronics heads up display, for example, well, you have to pay for it. If you wanted to have the functionality for bumper to bumper in traffic, self-driving, well, you had to buy the option with the sensors. And the software is coming with it. But Tesla is kind of changing that. But so that leads to a second question, actually, Tesla, which is, how deep can you or must you go? I've always been skeptical, being an embedded guy, about Tesla claiming that they're doing over-the-air update for everything all the way down to the metal. And I'm still skeptical. Yes, you can go really down, but there's some pieces you cannot just break, and you cannot do that remotely because it's too risky to break it unless they found the ultimate
For example.
solution. I don't know. I mean, but at the end of the day, how deep do you think it's necessary and possible to go in the software stack? Do you have to go all the way to the real time or OS that is on that box that you want to update and push software to? Is there a difference between the app update and the platform update, I would say? So what's your opinion there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And yeah, let me say something first. So when I was getting deeper and deeper into the industrial IoT, I was really surprised at how adverse are companies on software updates. Speaking with key players, they were saying, no, we make hardware, and this is never it's going to get updated. So it's even a Linux device that it's never gonna. And they were like explaining like, yeah, our hardware it's not updated it's not going to be updated in 20, 30, 40 years. Like, oh wow, are you serious about that? So you're going to give the same value to your customers, no? From today till in 40 years, in 2060 something. Are you sure this is the way we are working, no? In 2020s? And actually, I remember as well another conversation with another solution provider that was mentioning, no, we are using a Linux operating system from 15 years ago, and we don't plan to update it in any of the connected machines that we have in the edge on industrial shop floors. Like, are you serious? So how companies that are that software update adverse or security first, etc., wants to have that type of operating system running on edge devices on their shop floor? And how can IT people in a house to do that? So I think, for security, what we see as a pattern at Balena is that most of our customers do software updates for security concerns. And not only for the application running on devices, but as well for the host OS running on their devices. So it's important as well that your operating system gets updated, gets the latest Linux patches for security or for whatever, because that's as well, it's important for your security and for the life cycle of your products and your applications.
Agreed. I have an upcoming episode with someone called Boyd Moulter. He used to be with the XNA team and did a lot of things. And he's on a venture which is very interesting, using formal methods to implement a new real-time OS that will be mathematically proven. And we have that conversation. I will not spoil it today, but it is coming up in a few weeks from now on the IoT show. But it's very interesting because his perspective is that, it's not just, it's often a matter of security, but, the actual state of how we are developing systems, especially when they are Linux-based, they're bigger, more functionality, more app updates and so on, is how do you demonstrate or mathematically prove that in any circumstances, in any context, the software will do what it's supposed to do? Like, how do you determine that? How is it deterministic, and how do you prove that? And that's for another conversation, but that's
exactly.
definitely something where you will figure out you have a need to change the software because there is a situation, a context, a set of parameters you had not planned for and not tested for. And now you're just like, okay, so that device is a break now or is useless because it's not tuned for this context. And in hardware, we have something called calibration, right? That when you have mechanics, physics, and so on involved, you need to calibrate your sensor, calibrate your mechanics, and so on, recalibrate when there is wear and tear in order for it to work in its optimal way. I would say software could be the same. You have to recalibrate the software based on the context, right?
Yeah, and for example, we are used to run Balena devices, for example, on places with unreliable networks or even unreliable storage, for example. So SD cards are super unreliable. So how can you bring the best industrial grade solution with this type of uncertainties that you have? Every customer has its own requirements and its own uncertainties. So how can you have something that works and
exactly.
fail?
So let me ask you that. How? So tell me about Balena IO and how can you address this problem?
Yeah, let me give a bit of context because Balena, it's 12-year-old company right now, and it was created actually because at that moment it was really easy for web developers or DevOps to fix something on the data centers where web pages were hosted, or where it was easy to just create a new feature on a website or fix a typo on a website. So the founders of Balena were like, why we cannot use the tools that web developers or DevOps for web are using for embedded devices? No, what's the difference? Why we cannot use the same tools that they use? And that as well, if we enable these developers to use similar tools or almost the same tools, there will be more developers going from web to IoT and embedded. So that was like kind of a strategy to do that. So we start at that moment, the state of the art was Git and was containers. So we made that big bet saying, okay, we want to use container on embedded devices. And actually in 2013, Balena, at that time called Resin.io, was the first company who ran Docker containers on ARM devices, so on a Raspberry Pi.
I remember that.
And that with that in mind, so Balena started to be a company that was basically enabling companies to run operating systems for embedded devices that only can run containers. We can talk later, like a little bit more deeper on that. and the applications only can run on containers. Anything can run on the host OS for security reasons. And that facilitates basically the software updates and all the fleet management tools that are on the top of this ecosystem.
Yep. And that's interesting you're saying that, because one of the things I noticed is that there's been in that endeavor to integrate OT and IT. That's something we hear a lot about these days. I've seen that blockage of the IT refusing to integrate OT for these security reasons, or for the reason of like, hey, I will be the one managing this software on this fleet of devices that I don't know anything about. I'm already managing a fleet of servers and desktops, Macs, PCs, whatnot, and have tools for that. So now you're telling me I need to put another tool next to mine and use different technologies and learn something new. It's a big no. And OT people are just like, well, that's the way it is, right? And so I see that trend of bringing technology from the mainstream development and DevOps into this world of OT. And OT is like kind of, oh, okay, we have to do it. And so I do see that trend where there is that recognition that OT needs to modernize and adopt technologies that have been proven for decades now to allow maintainers, IT pros to deploy them and manage applications on machines. And so, yeah, I definitely hear that. Before you jump into a demo, I also am seeing the trend for the adoption of Kubernetes, which is about orchestrating containers, right? So Balena, previously Raisin, has been here for way longer. How does it differ? When to choose which? Like, do you have a little spiel about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question that a lot of people ask. And basically, Kubernetes and Balena solve similar problems, but on different layers, I would say. So, for example, Kubernetes, it's pushing more towards, for example, data centers. And Balena, it's more focused on the edge devices and basically on, as well as specialized on unreliable networks and unreliable storage, as I mentioned before. Kubernetes, it's more focused on on services running, and as well don't care, for example, on building the applications. This is something as well that we do. So we enable our customers to do continuous integration and continuous deployment of their applications. And it's Balena who builds these applications and deploy the images from these applications on the devices. And this is as well something not done by Kubernetes. So I think we are on kind of different layers. We have both APIs to manage devices and manage software updates. But we go from the operating system to the application, and I think they are like a bit above. So they are able to run Linux containers, but they don't care about the operating system below that. Well, it needs to be Linux, I guess. But,
that makes sense.
And probably we could say that Kubernetes is more focused on data centers and etc. And we focus just on edge devices. On the other hand, we can say that we are testing now an experiments with Balena. You can find it on GitHub, Balena-io experimental, where we are running Q3S on Balena. So you can start experimenting this light version, maybe of Kubernetes running on Balena.
I like that. And you're perfectly right. From what I've seen, Kubernetes, K3S, Azure Arc in the realm of Microsoft to manage across clouds and across hybrid architectures, and infrastructure with clusters and so on. Kubernetes is really about the plumbing of managing of orchestrating these containers, and I also know that it's a lot about the redundancy, on a cluster, being able to distribute the software in a way that is stable, I would say, and redundant, leveraging, lower grade hardware to run more software and so on. Balena, more about the actual management of your OT infrastructure, right? Is it fair to say that?
And actually, I'm not a great buyer of this use case that, let's distribute charge of whatever on other devices on the network, because we think that every device every IoT device should be self-sustainable on computational point of view.
Mhm.
Maybe there could be a use case for AI in the edge, etc. But we still don't see that like orchestration of workloads. It's something really relevant on the
I know
IoT.
that me as an embedded guy, each time I see a demo about corners that say, well, when your software crashes, then you know there is a redundancy there. It's like you just wait a second. So you mean that your software is crashing? I don't want that on my embedded device, right?
Exactly,
So,
and it's not that easy, right? I mean, when you need to scale, when you need to scale servers, it's not that easy, right? At first it crash and then start scaling.
Yeah,
So
you have
these
an entropy. You have an
things.
entropy where it becomes hard to test all scenarios where, hey, I'm going to have that module and that one. And well, we're diverting anyway. So now, Marc, I would like for you to give us a little demo of Balena. We talked enough. People want to see it in action. Do you have a couple of things you want to show us about Balena to get started and for people to understand better?
Before that, I just, because I didn't answer your questions properly,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
let me explain what is Balena, really quick. So Balena is basically a secure container-based stack. So we started from the operating system, which is an open source Linux operating system based on Yocto. As I mentioned before, we go down to the operating system because we want to enable our customers to don't focus on the operating system development and maintenance. So, and we also want to do the operating system because, when you make products or hardware, it's not, if you do it for a lot of time, you will not have the same hardware or the same peripherals connected to that hardware, or even the Linux kernel is going to change security issues, etc. So you are going to have in your life cycle different hardware, different sensors connected to that hardware, and you don't want to take care of, hey, I need to have different applications, different kernels. We have customers with different device types just using the same application and deploy this application on these different device types. So this is why we start focusing on the operating system first. So customers don't care about, or kind of don't care on the hardware that they use, because we help them with the operating system to run the same application and build the same application independently on the device type that they use. We currently support more than 100 device types, different. So from ARM devices to AMD or x86 devices, right? And on the other hand, on the top of the operating system, as I mentioned before, we only allow to run containers. So your application must be done on Docker containers. Anything that works on Balena, anything that I'm going to show you today, it's going to be compatible with your Linux operating system with Docker, run the Docker container, Docker engine running on your Linux device. So everything works. Then this this container engine, it's based on Moby project from Docker. And basically it's an open source, we open source most of it. And finally, on the top of the container engine, what we have, it's a management tool for devices. We have a premium, so everything is open source at the moment. And we have a premium tool, which is called Balena Cloud, which is the only premium tool that we have. Or you can go a full stack open source device management tool using Open Balena, okay, that you can find as well. So, and basically these tools are tools to manage devices, run diagnostics, do SSH to your devices, just see what's going on with them, check the logs, etc., etc.
Like that. So we are discussing very often about how hard it is to do embedded development, and embedded Linux / Yocto is no exception. It's not easy to adapt, an embedded Linux kernel to a new hardware, especially if you have custom hardware. So having the support of Balena, if I understand things correctly, allows you to abstract that complexity. If you're a company focused on what's the value add, right? Is it in me becoming an embedded developer? Or is it in me?
It's developing the operating system running on my devices. No, it's not, right?
That makes sense.
So now we are talking with companies that are struggling on not only the reliability of their application that brings the added value, but as well on the operating system running below that. So so this is why we decided to go towards the operating system level. We have to say as well that Balena, it's only compatible with single board computers. That means you need at least 1 gigabyte of RAM and 4 gigabytes of memory. So it's not compatible with microcontrollers. This is something that we didn't mention before.
That's fair. But that's fair. That's fair. We're talking about a category of devices that are higher up. But okay, let's.
So I brought here some devices. So we work from Raspberry Pis to NVIDIA Jetsons to x86 devices that you can find anywhere.
Things that are more and more common. I do see architectures in terms of hardware that are more and more distributed for systems, right? Where you have the microprocessors that are focused, a microcontroller, sorry, that are focused on that one task or of collecting data from sensors or actuators and controlling that in a safe way with some level of intelligence. But then you have a bigger device, a gateway, or an on-premise server that is more loaded with this kind of technologies and can do more. So, Marc, really, we need to get into that demo. It's important.
I'm sharing my screen if you want. So this is Balena Cloud interface. So for example, here I have an industrial, what I call the Ming stack that basically runs MQTT, InfluxDB, Node-RED, and Grafana. So for example, if you want to add a new device or multiple devices, sorry that it's only 2 devices. So you just need to download the operating system. You get the operating system. For example, you want to say it's production or development. You just add your Wi-Fi credentials, and you just flash this operating system on your hardware. In this case, it must be an x86 device. And actually, we have this Balena Etcher tool, which is one of our famous software that we have at Balena, used by millions of people, that will help you to flash a USB drive, to flash your x86 device. And actually, what you can get when you get into a device is you can get the logs of all the services running. In this case, this device is running 4 services. You can access by terminal to the host OS or to any of the service by SSH. You can access to the local IP address. You can see what version are you running, etc. But on the other hand, here I have a Raspberry Pi 4, which is running a camera, a Balena Cam, what I call. So, for example, if I get into the port 80 of the local IP address, and if it works, so you can see here a second camera of myself meanwhile I'm speaking. And just last thing, we have Balena Hub, which is an IoT marketplace application for Balena devices. And basically, the goal here is to enable anyone to just create applications and just clicking deploy this application, which must be open source and it's on GitHub, just get deployed on a fleet on Balena Cloud, and then you can start adding devices, just getting the operating system image.
Nice. Well, that's interesting because you're basically offering an app platform for embedded, for the edge, where it's not just about running your own piece of software, it's eventually integrating with other offers in a more modular way. And then eventually benefiting from the fact that someone has updated their MQTT broker or their, Modbus stack or whatnot, and then you can just benefit from the latest updates. One more reason to push updates, because you get new functionalities, bug fixes, security patches, and at the end of the day, this edge is no different than what we use. It's becoming more and more powerful. We're talking more and more about bringing AI to the edge. That requires more powerful hardware. And this hardware is looking more like a server or a PC than ever, right? And so why not managing it the same way at the end of the day, in a more safe and secure way at the end of the day?
I remember speaking with a solutions provider for industrial IoT and telling me, hey, we need to change the version of the MQTT broker here. Can you upgrade it? Yeah, and let's schedule a call tomorrow. And I was, no, wait, and 2 minutes later, we had the version that he required. And he was like, what did you do here? How did you achieve that? Like, come on. So if you would be able to have software updates on your fleets of devices, this is easy.
Yeah. This is critical. This is important. This is to be done, though, in a controlled manner, because we're talking about devices that are potentially exposed. So you need to secure all that. I love the idea of containers. It containerized, like you basically have this notion of having a sandbox for each of your apps, and then they can communicate. is Belena taking care of the security aspects, safety aspects? Like, is there a signing for the containers? How do you put that in the marketplace? How do you guarantee that this piece of software, this container, which is a binary deployed on my device, is the one that I'm expecting to be there? Is there some hash? Is there some encryption? What's behind all of that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, we are taking security very serious because it's important for it's really important for every customer, right? But we have some customers that ask a lot of questions about that. First thing, it's that Belena OS, you can run secure boot and full disk encryption for that because security must start from a hardware to upper layers. So this is an important thing. Second, it's when you release when you deploy a new release on the devices that belong to your fleet. We check that the images downloaded are properly downloaded and is the software that has been built in Belena Cloud Builders. But from there we don't do much more. I mean, it's then the application that our customers use. It's needed. We require some ports open in the firewalls in case that you are in an industry, and on industries that they cannot allow our customers to open those ports. They do it during maintenance windows, or they can run as well Belena Cloud on-premise. So we have another product called Belena Machine, which is basically what I show you, but that can run on-premise. So we have customers, for example, in China, where this doesn't work, that they have a Belena machine there physically in the edge, and it's like having Belena Cloud, and they locally connect to this Belena machine there and can provision the devices from the factory.
Yeah, so this definitely is a scenario we're hearing a lot about in industrial automation when you have a layered network. ISO 95, and you need to basically protect each layer from one another. And so deploying updates in this infrastructure is not easy, and you need at some point to be able to have this distribution of the updates and so on. And so definitely a tough problem, but Belena seems to be addressing a lot of the use cases, and open source versus Belena Cloud with an offer for support there. I love that, and that's a good structure. It's like, hey, if I'm comfortable enough to go with all the open source stack, I guess you guys are here to help them, get started and get moving.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, if they want to not have or don't have the skill set, they can benefit from an actual, device update as a platform service.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we see more and more companies going from Open Belena to Belena Cloud because they want to have someone who takes. At the end, there is a business model, right? So there is a limit where running your own service makes sense, but when you reach a specific limit, now you need more and more people to take care of that. It's easier to go to a third-party company to manage that.
Embedded is hard. IoT is hard.
It's really hard, but we are getting there. We are reducing the friction.
There was a time where it was common for anyone to do their own, car check-in, oil change, and so on, because it was not that hard. But the cars became so hard and complex that you actually are relying on a professional to do it for you. And indeed, you want to go with a professional that is the most trustworthy and that will do that, for the less money for you, and or that will support you in adding the value, using your car rather than spending your time under the hood trying to fix it, basically.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Marc, thanks a lot for your time today. Nice introduction. We'll add some links down there in the description. And people can find you, the IoT Coffee Talk, and other community events, because you're very much community driven, and people can follow you and so on. So I really appreciate your time today, Marc.
Thank you very much for the invitation. See you next time. Bye.
See you. Bye.